So let's talk about a word that is heavy with historical and moral baggage: sin. Today, though, we're going to strip away all that judgment and look at it through a completely different lens, an energetic one. We're going to reframe this really loaded term not as some kind of moral failing, but as a simple mechanical process of misalignment.
All right, to get us started, let's just dive right in with a big question. What if sin has absolutely nothing to do with breaking a set of external rules? What if, at its core, it simply means to miss the mark, to fall out of alignment with our own natural, coherent energy? This is the central idea we're going to be exploring.
Okay, so here is our new working definition. Sin is the misqualification of pure life energy. Now, what on earth does that mean? Well, think of your energy as being naturally pure, clean, and life-supporting. Misqualification is just a fancy way of saying that our own consciousness can distort or kind of dirty this energy through our perceptions and intentions. See? It's a process, not a moral verdict.
So how does this distortion actually happen? It's not just some random event. There's a really clear step-by-step pathway. We're going to walk through exactly how pure, frictionless energy can become misaligned, creating this internal disorder that eventually starts to show up in our lives.
This whole path of distortion really unfolds in 3 distinct stages. It all kicks off with how we see the world. That's false perception. Then it moves to how we feel about what we see, which is the emotional misqualification part. And finally, it solidifies into who we believe we are, and that's identity attachment. So let's unpack these one by one.
The very first step, the root of this whole thing, isn't about malice or being evil. It's actually just described as ignorance, or you could say a simple misseeing of reality. It's that moment when our consciousness adopts a flawed premise, a belief that we are separate from everything, that we're fundamentally unsafe, or that our worth is conditional. As soon as that perception gets distorted, our energy just can't flow in that neutral, life-supporting way anymore.
And this right here is the crucial next step. That distorted thought, it immediately charges our neutral life energy with an emotion. Fear, for example, creates contraction. Anger creates this kind of destructive heat. Guilt creates a heavy inward suppression. Just like the quote says, the energy itself isn't good or bad. It's our emotional state that gives it its charge and its direction.
And that brings us to the final stage. When these emotional charges just keep repeating over and over again, the energy stops flowing freely. It becomes, sticky. It gets bound to our very sense of self. We shift from feeling an emotion, like, I feel angry, to embodying a whole identity. I am an angry person. At this point, the misalignment isn't just a temporary action anymore. It has become a fixed state of being.
So, all of this might sound a little bit abstract. I get it. But this is where it becomes incredibly real and tangible. This misaligned energy doesn't just stay in our heads, it translates directly into our physical bodies. Let's take a look at how this builds from a state of consciousness to a real biological consequence. This chart just makes the connection crystal clear. You see, the body essentially obeys the instructions that our consciousness gives it. That energetic pattern of fear and contraction, that can trigger chronic stress hormones like cortisol. The pattern of anger and aggression, that's been linked to inflammatory processes. Guilt and suppression can actually lead to immune dysregulation. There's a direct line from the energetic cause to the physiological effect. And when those physiological stress responses are active for long periods of time, the consequences can become pretty serious. We're talking about things like chronic fatigue, hypertension, autoimmune conditions, digestive disorders, and of course, mental health challenges like anxiety and depression. The source material actually describes illness as frozen information. It's energy that just got stuck and couldn't complete its natural cycle.
Okay, so how can we actually identify these patterns in ourselves? Well, the sources offer a really practical framework using the chakra system, but think of it less as something mystical and more like a burden index, a kind of diagnostic map that shows us exactly where and how these energetic misalignments are showing up in our day-to-day lives.
Let's look at a really concrete example, the root chakra. This is all about our fundamental needs for survival, safety, and trust. The core misalignment here is fear, which usually manifests as a deep belief in scarcity. So how does this actually show up? It looks like chronic worry about money, even when you have enough. It looks like a rigid, I have to do it all alone attitude, or maybe immediately getting defensive whenever someone offers feedback.
Now, for a totally different feel, let's look at the heart chakra, which is related to love and connection. Here, the core misalignment often comes from past wounding that hardens into bitterness over time. And what's the results? We might hold on to grudges for years. We might keep score in our relationships, feel emotionally numb, or even find it really hard to accept a simple compliment or kindness from someone.
So, if that's the problem, what's the solution? Well, the good news is that just as there's a clear path into distortion, there is an equally clear path out. This section is all about the practical steps for realigning that energy and restoring it back to its natural, coherent state.
The path to healing really just directly mirrors and reverses the path to distortion. It all starts with awareness, just seeing the pattern clearly without any judgment. The second step is truth, actively correcting that false perception that started this whole mess. And the final, absolutely crucial step is forgiveness. Now, this isn't some moral act you do for someone else. It is the mechanism for releasing that sticky, emotional, and energetic charge from your own system. So, the bottom line is this. If we reframe sin as distorted consciousness, not as a crime, then the entire paradigm just shifts. Healing is no longer about punishment or penance. It's simply about the restoration of clarity. Because when we restore clarity to our perception, our energy naturally requalifies itself, and the body can finally begin to repair.
And that leaves us with one final, powerful question to reflect on. This isn't about judging your past or fearing the future. It's about recognizing that right here, in this moment, you have a choice. Looking at your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions right now, what energy pattern are you choosing to align with today?